From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was another committee day here in the Alabama legislature, with more than 20 meetings taking place throughout the course of the day. Committees play an important role in the legislative process. They consist of members more finely attuned to specific issue areas and allow for more thorough debate, public hearing, and amending of legislation. Some high-profile bills were up today, and we'll start in the House, where legislation dealing with, quote, divisive concepts was before the House State Government Committee. House Bill 7 from State Representative Ed Oliver would prohibit certain public entities, including state agencies, K-12 schools, and colleges, from promoting or endorsing certain divisive concepts related to race, sex, or religion. This bill would also prohibit certain public entities from conditioning enrollment or attendance in certain classes based on race. The committee advanced the bill after a public hearing that included some passionate arguments on both sides.
It doesn't prevent teaching any history, which is how it always gets framed, as we can't teach history because of this bill. We are all proponents of history, good, bad, and ugly. It's who we are, and it's what makes us who we are. And there's nothing we can do about that. We are at a point, though, in the world where we would like to find ways to coalesce around the things that make us strong and move forward. And I'm one of those people, I don't want kids in school. I think about when I was a child. It's hard enough to learn how to read and write and do math, which I still don't do very well, obviously. But without having these diversions that are going on around you, and racism is a serious issue. It's not something we should teach kids. We don't want to teach them how to be racist. I think that's wrong.
My folks were enslaved. That's a fact. Slavery by its very nature was evil, it was sinister, it was divisive. So that would be a divisive concept. But there's not a single person who votes in favor of this today who's going to say, take down the Confederate flag. There's not going to be a single person who votes in favor of this today who's going to say that, you know what, there were some things that some of my ancestors did that were wrong. And you know what? It wasn't me, but I know that it was wrong. And I do feel that it is part of my responsibility to do what's right here, right now, going forward.
On a related subject, the Senate Education Policy Committee advanced legislation ensuring that history would be taught in a factual and inclusive manner. Senate Bill 180 is sponsored by Senator Roger Smitherman, who says that sometimes history instruction leaves out the important contributions of African Americans.
So many times those contributions get lost in our presentation of who provided what for our state. We know that African Americans provided the discovery and invention of the stoplight, but yet many times you look at it when they're talking about that, they talk about the manufacturer, or this light was provided, et cetera, about the manufacturer. It says nothing about who discovered it. We're talking history books, and nothing about who actually was the person who invented it or who discovered it. So we want to give proper credit to our citizens in the state for the history that they provide for us and the quality of life that help us to enjoy at this time.
The Senate Judiciary Committee took up and unanimously passed legislation aimed at limiting the state from suspending the driver's licenses of those charged with non-moving traffic violations, such as failure to appear or unpaid parking tickets. The bill's sponsor, State Senator Will Barfoot, says excessive driver's license suspensions are keeping available workers on the sideline during a workforce shortage. Senate Bill 154 would provide that a person's license could only be suspended after a judgment has been rendered and if they miss 2 or more hearings or 6 or more payments.
Now, there are those who say, well, this is an effort to make sure that court costs or fines are not paid. Not the case. All court costs and fines ordered by the court will be paid, have to be paid, and this bill does nothing with that. There's still the ability for the courts, should you miss a court appearance date, after an adjudication to issue a warrant for your arrest and bring you in. Still there. Current law remains the law. There's still an ability for the courts, should you miss more than or a payment at any point in time. If you paid religiously like you're supposed to for 2 years and then you miss a payment, guess what? The courts still have the ability under current law and this bill to bring you in for a contempt hearing, ask you why you haven't paid, and hold you in contempt if they find that your conduct is contemptuous.
Lawmakers heard from multiple groups today in Montgomery. Doctors from around the state gathered here for a news conference to raise awareness of a physician shortage in Alabama. They say the state's healthcare workforce is under strain from retirements, physician burnout, and growing healthcare needs. They are supporting Senate Bill 154 from Senator April Weaver and House Bill 243 from Representative Paul Lee. They're known as the Physician Workforce Act. The bill deals with the licensure process at the Board of Medical Examiners and is meant to help recruit more doctors and better utilize Alabama's existing physician workforce.
The physician workforce is vanishing. And that's why I'm happy to be here today with Senator Weaver, Representative Lee, other individuals to bring that statement to your attention. They worked with other health care organizations in the state to bring this bill forward because it provides immediate relief. And the mechanisms by which it does that, it makes it simpler for us to recruit physicians to the state of Alabama. It takes a physician work pool that we have already and gets them involved in patient health care ahead of their training schedules. And it creates a new apprenticeship category for physicians so they can work with supervising physicians and begin to render care.
Mayors from Alabama's largest cities, known as the Big Ten, hosted a breakfast for lawmakers this morning to share parts of their legislative agenda. The group includes mayors from Birmingham, Montgomery, Huntsville, Mobile, Tuscaloosa, Auburn, Dothan, Hoover, Decatur, and Madison. Topping their agenda is legislation amending the state's online sales tax, aimed to make it fairer towards smaller, homegrown businesses.
One of the pieces of legislation that the Big Ten mayors are keenly interested in is simplified seller's use tax and creating more transparency with it. So you're probably wondering, why does that matter? It matters because our business in Tuscaloosa is built on small businesses. And I would imagine if I went around this room, every single one of you would say the same. The small businesses are the heart and soul of your community. As mayors, we believe that those mom and pop stores, people who took great risk, went to the banks and went to the loan committees and borrowed that money and put everything on the line, they deserve the same opportunity and the same fairness that companies from outside the state of Alabama have.
Lawmakers will return to floor action on Thursday, the 9th day of this 2023 regular session. Both the House and Senate are expected to take up the package of bills modernizing Alabama's economic development incentives, known as the Game Plan. Coming up next, I'll sit down with State Representative Juandalynn Givan to discuss the latest on Birmingham Southern College's request for financial assistance from the state. And after that, I'll visit with Gordon Stone of the Higher Education Partnership about tomorrow's Higher Ed Day at the State House and what we can expect. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Joining me next is State Representative Juandalynn Givan of Birmingham. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've really brought a lot of attention to the issue of Birmingham Southern. And this is, we actually spoke with the president a few weeks ago, but they're facing some serious financial difficulties, possible closure in the future, and they've come to the state legislature asking for help, financial assistance. What is your case? You represent the campus.
I do. I represent House District 60. The campus sits prominently in House District 60 and has been so for many years, and I'm honored to do so. The institution is facing closure. They reached out to me in my legislative capacity, as well as the delegation for Jefferson County a few weeks back, to simply say, look, we're about to close. If we've run low on our endowment, we need help. But it's been a tough road for some philosophical purposes and reasons, as well as others. And so I'm thankful at this point. Right now, it looks like there may be a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I guess the big issue is it's a private institution, right? If we were talking about a public, university,
Well,
that would be a different story. But because it's private, some people have trouble with the bailout kind of situation.
You have a number of issues. The issues that I have heard is, of course, the public versus private is number one. Not just from Republicans, but Democrats. There are just some individuals who have problems and take issue with giving public dollars for a private purpose or to a private institution of any sort. You hear issues of racial undertones, because this is considered a white institution, although they do have black and minority students on campus, but it's considered the Birmingham Southern. Whereas you have Miles College that sits just only less than 6 miles away, not quite 7 miles away, that sits there in between Birmingham and in the Fairfield area. Then you have other state institutions that have faced the possibility of closure and had financial difficulties, but the state did nothing to help them. Stillman College, just a few years, was one. They were on the brink of closing. Of course, we lost Judson College, as well as some other institutions around the state over a period of time. But the state turned a deaf ear, and ultimately those institutions of higher education and learning closed. So it's a combination of things. But what I really want the public to know, I had to get beyond the public-private issue. That argument goes out the window, especially with regards to the supplemental plan that is coming back to us, because there are clearly identified in that package line items that are for private purposes. So that was a saving grace for Birmingham Southern.
But Birmingham Southern was not in the supplemental the governor sent over.
No.
But that doesn't mean it's over, because it's the legislature.
No, because we've now come up with a plan, but that was an opportunity for us to be able to say, now, if we're going to allow for this, then that argument now goes out the window. And it ended up being a lifeline to Birmingham Southern. And so where we are now is that we're looking at the construct of legislation that will create a loan incentive program here in the state of Alabama. So Birmingham Southern, as well as other institutions at some period, would be able to submit a request or an application for funds that will be there for the purpose of assisting them through this crisis period.
Well, because I heard the speaker say he was uncomfortable with the first plan of just a line item. He was more comfortable with the idea of a loan. So it sounds like there's some, like you said, light.
Yes.
But would the college be okay with that? Would they be okay with
Well,
that?
they're going to have to be okay, because this was the suggestion that I gave to the president day one. I said, look, you're asking for an outright gift. That's going to be very difficult to overcome. I shared in a town hall meeting, packed auditorium. I said to him and to the Board of Trustees members that were there, to the students and faculty that was in the audience, you've got to come up with another plan. An outright gift of $37 million from the state of Alabama wasn't going to happen. But I want to say one thing, if you would allow me. One of the reasons I'm pushing so hard for Birmingham Southern, we don't need to lose another educational institution. But the realization is this: Birmingham Southern sits properly in the heart of a residential community. Now, unless there is another plan, and I don't mean a plan that you could propose that's going to take place in a year or 2 years, unless there was a solid plan of action for that campus to be taken over day one upon Birmingham Southern's closing, if that happened, that institution takes up over half of what is the Bush Hill neighborhood.
So it would be devastating.
It would be devastating. So for me, I had to look beyond the public. I had to look beyond the private. I'm a Miles College graduate. Go Bears. I love my institution. If it were not for Miles College, I would not be sitting here. Plus, I support HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. But if that institution, Birmingham Southern, were to close without a real plan, it would be no different than Caraway Hospital in Birmingham. You've seen that area before. It would be no different than Daniel Payne College that closed many years ago, that sat in the heart of a residential community, as well as other institutions in and around the state that just has sat there and have become a blight, overgrown lots, with the possibility of, at some point, someone said there's a plan, but there was no plan.
Well, we're out of time, but this is an issue we're going to be following, and I really appreciate you coming on the show to share about it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
James Alexander Bryan, better known as Brother Bryan, was a well-loved pastor of Third Presbyterian Church in Birmingham. He was an outspoken supporter of racial reconciliation. He's best remembered for his tireless efforts to help the poor and homeless. A 1934 statue of Brother Bryan kneeling in prayer is one of Birmingham's best-known landmarks. The city of Birmingham renamed Magnolia Park as Brother Bryan Park in his honor.
Tomorrow is Higher Ed Day here at the State House, and joining me next to talk about it is Gordon Stone, Executive Director of the Higher Education Partnership. Gordon, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. And what a great opportunity we have to discuss issues in Alabama. I appreciate what you do with Capitol Journal.
Well, thanks. We have fun doing it. We try to, at least. Well, yeah, Higher Ed Day. It happens every year. It's tomorrow. I'm glad we have you on before so you can kind of preview the festivities. What do you have planned? What's the theme for this year?
Well, I think overall you could say more than an education. We know our universities are great providers of educational opportunities for young people across the state. But we also want to emphasize tomorrow all the other things that we do that make a difference in the lives of Alabamians. So we'll have the typical opportunities for that message to be heard. We start with a parade, and then we have the band will lead us through the streets of the city, and we'll have signs that will illustrate the economic impact of our institutions. $20 billion of total economic return in the state of Alabama on an annual basis, and $12.50 back into the economy for every dollar invested. There'll be plenty of illustration signs of that as we march down, and lots of fun, lots of festivity associated with it. The mascots will be leading it. So it's a fun day, but it's a day where that fun is intended to also communicate some important messages. Then we go to the front of the State House, where our SGA presidents and our leaders from our campuses will collectively sign a board that says we pledge to support our state and we pledge to support our universities and the important difference that they make. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take that, go to the lunch where we'll have about 1,000 of our folks from university community, students and faculty and alumni, but mostly students will be here tomorrow. And they'll hear from the governor, the lieutenant governor, the pro tem of the Senate, the chairman of the finance committees on both sides of the aisle. So it'll be fun to have our students hear from them. But in the meantime, they will have already invited their legislators from their local district to come and sit with them and enjoy the lunch so they can fellowship and talk more specifically about some of those critical points about how our universities, when we say more than an education, how we are changing lives.
Well, and barbecue hopefully will be.
It's barbecue, absolutely. It's a tradition.
We do miss the barbecue house, by the way.
Yes, we do.
Let's talk about student retention and this issue of it's been highlighted by y'all's organization, AIC, and now the Innovation Corporation. Y'all have been working together on this issue of students that graduate from our great universities, trying to keep them here in the state to work. Of course, you're going to lose some. We know that, but I know that they've asked some of the universities, what can you do? I know y'all been working on this. What's the latest in terms of this student retention piece?
Absolutely. So we have the Student Retention Council, which is a component of the Higher Education Partnership. It's been led by Lexi Bolton on our team, done a great job of putting that program together. And the Student Retention Council's whole idea was to try to get student voices into the mix of public policy, into the mix of strategy when it comes to the Department of Commerce and all the thinkers that are out there looking for jobs. What kind of jobs are going to be attractive to that next generation of college graduate? Because really, if you look at Alabama statistically, we're about 10 percentage points behind in the number of college graduates in our workforce than the national average. Well, when you look at that over a period of years, the multiplier impact, that we're leaving a lot of money on the table that would be fed back into our economy. But we have to go create or recruit those kinds of jobs. So the Student Retention Council has helped define what that path forward looks like in the minds of those young people, so that our strategic thinkers can build that pathway in a way that will attract those students to stay here. So we're not telling any student you should stay in Alabama or you have to stay in Alabama. What we're asking every student to do is consider Alabama.
It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just, hey, yeah, stay in Alabama. Well, their feedback counts for what Alabama needs to do to remain competitive.
Well, as a small town mayor, one of the things we think about is how can we be attractive to that population that's going to bring so much more back to our town, or as a state, so the Student Retention Council has helped define that, and we're really excited about working with the Innovation Corporation, some of the resources they have that are being provided for entrepreneurship and capital for new kinds of ventures. So all of that together, when we say more than an education, that's what we're talking about. We in our 12 counties where our universities are located, there are 1.5 million Alabamians employed. Now you look at a state that has about 5 million people total, that tells you that we are in the heartbeat of where our economy is thriving in this state. So how do we continue to do things that are going to bolster that economy and strengthen it for careers that will be competitive anywhere in the United States? And that's what we want to do. So it's been exciting. The partnership certainly watches legislation, and we keep up with what's happening on the day-to-day basis, the budgets, and thank you to the governor, and looking forward to nurturing that through. We've got a nice increase this year, and most of our institutions are continuing to work with the supplementals, so we appreciate the starting point there. We will continue to work with various pieces of legislation. We'll talk about some of that tomorrow, but we really want to focus in on the fact that our universities are valuable assets for this state. And we might say more than education, sports, but more than education, quality of life in general. All the things that we have that enrich our state because of our institutions, all the research we do and how that applies to our medical community, how it applies to our food safety, our food availability, all the things that make our lives what they are.
We're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you, all the students that come to Montgomery, north, south, everywhere from these universities, they're participating in your STARS program, they're participating. Talk about the importance of those young college students coming to Montgomery, engaging in the process, and what it can. I was one of those students many years ago. The importance of them engaging in the political process.
We like to believe that we're investing in the future leaders of our state, and we're helping them understand the complexity of the issues and how to resolve those issues over time. And when you walk the State House like I get the chance to do, or you walk around in the leadership pockets of our state like we have a chance to do at chamber meetings and economic development meetings around the state, and you meet people who, just like you, who said, oh, I went to the STARS conference in whatever year. This is our 25th anniversary of the Higher Education Partnership this year. And you multiply 25 years of engaging in the best and brightest leaders in our state and encouraging them to understand pre-K through PhD education and how that enriches all the lives. When we say more than an education, we're talking about developing leaders. We're talking about keeping those leaders here by showing them a pathway that they can engage in our state. And you spent some time out of state and you came back, and thank you for that. And that same message out there for those that are with us today. Tomorrow will be a fun day. There'll be flags and banners and music and festivity, but there's a very serious message under that, and that is empower the institutions so they can do their job. Give them the opportunity to continue to strengthen our state. We are a major part of the workforce, and sometimes I think we forget that, but our component of the workforce is the part of the workforce that so many of us benefit from on a daily basis and don't even think about it.
Well, we're out of time. Looking forward to tomorrow, but thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure, and you do a great job.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
When the Soviet Union successfully launched Sputnik in October 1957, the United States needed to quickly join the space race. Werner von Braun, head of the U.S. space program at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, suggested using a modified Redstone rocket to President Eisenhower. The resulting rocket, Juno, launched Explorer 1, America's first satellite into orbit, on January 31, 1958. The satellite remained in space until 1970.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night with more coverage of the Alabama legislature right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.